Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tackle Talk Live. I'm Ranger Dyer, Pro Staffer Steve Graff, along with V&M General Manager Kevin Jean. And once again, part 3 of our special series on the Hemphill Gang. And Kevin, tell them who we got today.
The one and only Mr. Larry Nixon.
The general.
The general himself, who has won in over $3 million between FLW and BAS.
Yeah.
It's
insane.
It really
to have a
is.
career like he's had, he's a true definition to me of a legend of this sport.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He is, any and everything bass fishing, one of the first names you think of is Larry Nixon.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And looking forward to having him on here in just a few minutes. Real quick, Kevin, tell us about our sponsor.
The Boat Shop. Mr. Raymond Kidd and his staff take great pride in keeping your boat and motor performing at its best. A certified Yamaha dealer and home to the best the best motor on the market today, the Yamaha Show. They also carry one of the best aluminum boats around, Sea Arc. So stop by 2410 Sanford Avenue in Shreveport and let the Boat Shop take care of all your boating needs.
Real quick, we want to send out our thoughts and prayers to the Aaron Martin family as Aaron's going through brain surgery this morning. Hadn't heard any updates at this time, but he's in Birmingham, Alabama. He had a couple of seizures this past weekend, and they went in and I guess they did a CAT scan and probably saw lesions on the brain, and they're going and doing some brain surgery to remove those. So let's keep Aaron and his family in our thoughts and prayers.
Absolutely. And this is a hard time for the family because the family can't go into the hospital and be with him right now.
Right.
I know Aaron's very close with his family and his girls, and again, like Steve said, we're just sending our thoughts and prayers out to that family and hoping Aaron comes through this and they can get everything taken care of. Yeah,
that's what we're hoping for, and hopefully Aaron will make a quick recovery. Real quick, we're going to try to get Larry on the phone here and do a little visiting with Larry, talk about some of the good old days of bass fishing, and one of the first things I want Larry. Hey, Larry, how you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all today?
We are doing outstanding, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I assume you're busy, or maybe you're not busy right now.
If there's anybody busy, I don't know it.
Exactly.
If I get busy, I go out there and get in the truck and go to the lake.
Yeah, busy has a new definition now, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Well, Larry, hey, we can't say thank you enough for joining us. We've had the last couple of episodes. We've had Tommy Martin on. We've had Harold Allen on the last 2 shows, and you're going to kind of wind up the Hemphill Gang. And I guess the first question we want to confirm, because me and Kevin both have heard different lists from different people as to who the original Hemphill Gang really entailed besides you and Tommy and Harold Allen. Name the other guys.
And every year, in every episode, we talk to Mr. Tommy and Mr. Harold. We keep adding people to this list, Mr. Larry. So let me call out the list to you, and you tell me if we're missing anybody. So I got yourself.
Or if it's not, that they're not supposed to be on the list.
Tommy Martin, Harold Allen, John Torian, John Hall, John Dean, and somebody we left off the list last week. Mr. Tommy Martin called and made sure we had him on that list, is Mr. Bo Dowden.
Well, that's correct, but the original Hemphill Gang, if I remember right on the poster, was just the 5 guys.
That's what I thought. Bo Dowden was not a part of that original group, right?
Right.
Right.
I don't remember whether I know Bo came after, but I'm not sure his address was Hemphill at that time.
No,
I'm
actually,
pretty sure Bo and John Dean was both in Louisiana.
Yeah, actually, he lived in Natchitoches, Louisiana, because he had a boat dealership. And I actually was going to go to work for him in the mid-'80s and as a sales rep for him. And,
that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So you're talking poster boys for the Hemphill Gang. Yourself, Tommy Martin, Harold Allen. It would have been John Torian, and who would the fifth?
John Hall.
John Hall.
Okay.
So that would have been the 5 basically poster boys for the Hemphill Gang.
Okay.
Now, John Dean, he was just across the bridge there at Pendleton Bridge on the Louisiana side. And when that article came out and the photograph hit, and I've actually got the old wall hanging plaster of the Hemphill Gang, and that's the 5 that was on it.
Oh, boy, I'd like to have a copy of that.
I'll take a picture of it and send it to you.
Oh, hey, that'd be great.
Please, yeah,
that'd be awesome.
We would love to put that up.
Well, first question I
Yeah,
got for
I still got that framed when Pendleton Harbor was had the club and all that. And the club burned down. Well, I think my wife grabbed that and got it out of there, and it hung in the marina forever. And then when Mr. Bob sold the marina, we got it.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That's a great artifact to have. I'll promise you that. Hey,
yes, it is.
By the way, how's your shoulder? Didn't you have shoulder surgery? You recovering from that?
Yes, I had a complete replacement, and yes, it's awesome. I'm just still pretty weak in that right arm. If I hold my spinning rod for about an hour and a half, it starts feeling like a chunk of lead.
Yeah.
And but I am catching some crappie and a few walleye, and trying to go out there and fish 2 or 3 hours a day to get that strength built back up in it. You know, you can do all the exercises in the world, but sitting there with your arm tensed and ready, that's a whole different animal than working out with rubber bands and weights.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. Well, the next thing, I guess let's start from the beginning. Larry, you know, I know you're originally a South Louisiana boy, and you moved to Toledo Bend, I believe, in 1971. Is that correct?
Actually, I was in Arkansas. Born and raised. Well, I wasn't born in Arkansas, but we were living in Arkansas in 1968 or 69 when I made my first trip to Toledo Bend, and I was going to college and going broke. And I told Daddy, I said, you know, if you'd blown me your boat for about 3 months, I'll go down to Toledo Bend and guide for 3 months and make me some money, and then I'll come back home. And he said, well, that sounds good, but you better have my boat back in March. So in January of 72, or actually it was about December the 28th or 9th, I moved to Toledo and guided 3 months and sent him money to buy him a new Ranger. And I stayed.
Oh.
And I stayed there from January 1972 till 1987, I think. It's pretty much in that area there, right after the Hemphill Gang. But I was flying and traveling so much that Shreveport was a big pain in my butt. And getting home and getting out was always taking me 4 or 5 days. And I said, I got to go to a bigger airport and more centralized. So I moved back to Arkansas.
Oh.
Now, Mr. Larry, you said you just basically went and said, I'm going to go guide. You know, of course, y'all didn't have social media and stuff back then. How did you get the customers? I mean, you can't just show up and say, look, guys, I'm a guide. I'll take you out.
The Toledo Bend was red hot at that time, and all the guides the good fishermen, the really good fishermen, the Glenn Cossies and the Glenn Andrews and all of them guys came down from Table Rock to Greer's Ferry Lake in Arkansas, and that's how I met them when I was a teenager. And then all of a sudden they up and left me and went to Toledo Bend to guide and took all my buddies, my kids I went to school with. And so that's how I found out about Toledo being brand new, and they were begging for guides. And they, of course, they were telling me, you know, you need to come on down here. You can at least make some money. And so you know, I took them at their word, and I think I guided every single day from January the 25th probably through March the 31st. I mean, it was every day, sometimes two parties a day.
Now, what was the average day like in terms of catching fish? Well, give us an average day.
45 bass every day.
Oh my gosh.
That was the limit back then, 15 per man. And of course, back in the 70s and 80s, everybody kept everything. You know, that was food. Mm-hmm. And of course, we'd keep 45 in the morning, and sometimes I'd get another party in the evening and go out and get them a limit.
Mm.
Now
it was incredible.
Now, Mr. Larry, when did tournament angling become? You know, when did you really get into that? Now we're going to go ahead and tell you, Mr. Tommy Martin has already took credit for getting you into the tournament scene.
He says you owe him some money.
I owe Mr. Tommy Martin way more than you can imagine. Yeah, in about 76 or 75, somewhere right in there, Tommy Martin moved up to Pendleton Harbor and started guiding. And he had just won the Classic, in 74, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And anyway, me and Tommy had a lot of parties together, and every day, I was smashing them. I was on fire back then, you might say. And after a big cold front, we'd come in there, and I had about 40 or 50 bass. I don't remember what it was, and about 20 of them over 5 pounds. Tommy Martin come in there, and he looked at me and looked at them fish, and he said, "Young man," he said, "you ain't never going to make a living guiding." He said, "You need to be tournament fishing." He said, "You catch them every day, whether anybody else catches them or not." And I said, "You really think so?" And he said, "I know so." And he said, "It's just a matter, can you catch them when you lead Toledo Bend?" And I said, "Well, I don't know about that, but I'm going to give it a whirl." And so I saved all of the summer and fall of 76 to go fish my first BASS tournament in January 77, and I ain't never looked back.
Mm-hmm. Now, what was the entry fee back in those days?
$600.
Wow. That's a little different today.
Yeah, but let me tell you something. $600, that was 10 days of guiding.
Yeah.
And, that was $600 right there. And to step out and just throw away 10 fishing days was really hard for me. But I did it, and I was never sorry.
That guaranteed money's hard to walk away from, isn't it?
Yes, that very first year, they fished Toledo Bend, I think it was in February. I went to St. John's and won my money back and came home, but I could not afford to fish Toledo Bend because it had a 2 weeks off limits period. And I said, well, I'm just starting this crap. So I guided every day while everybody else was off limits. And then I kind of threw a few tips at old Mr. Bill Dance, and Bill come in second in that tournament, and I thought, dadgummit, I could have probably won that thing. And I might have made more money, but I didn't. I skipped it, and I wound up going to Gaston and finished pretty good. I think 10th, and I made the Classic that very first year, but still, had I not finished second in that 77 Classic and got $10,000, I would probably have not went on because I was pretty much in the hole. With no sponsors, fishing out of an old guide boat, and, just really roughing it. It still cost a lot of darn money to enter all them tournaments.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Finishing second behind Ricky Klein at Toho, that really set the stage.
Well, in 1980 at the Bassmaster Classic, Bo Dowden, who won that event, won $31,000 for his first place finish. You finished sixth and only won $1,000, but I guess $1,000 back then went a long way.
But also, Mr. Larry, I think that's the first year that it wasn't winner take all. Am I correct?
In 77 was the very first year it wasn't winner take all, because I got paid $10,000 per second.
Yeah, and that was the first year. And you were saying, just being able to win second in that one, to have the finances to go forward. But that was the first year that second place got anything.
That was the very first year. You're correct about that. In fact,
that's pretty good timing.
Yeah. Worked out pretty good.
That was that other little stroke of luck in there, that it saved my neck. And actually, I don't think everybody started getting paid. I can't remember exactly what year that was, but I don't think anybody else got paid in 77 but first and second.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I know I've heard stories on how Bill Dance rescued Rick Clunn out of his truck, and Rick was down to his last dollar. If he didn't do good in this tournament, he was gone. I guess I've heard so many stories like yours and like Rick's, and they were down to their last nickel, and all of a sudden they hit it right, and it's all about timing, isn't it?
It's all about timing back in them days. Everything was timing. You had to win any money. You could get a little bit back, and at least salvage a tournament if you got a check. But yeah, it's everything was in time and back in them days. I mean, there just wasn't a lot of money out there from sponsors and all that. Now, that was about the time that bass fishing really started getting big, though. I mean, there was money to be made, and then when the sponsors saw how important tournament fishing was to the industry, if you could win, oh yeah, you could get your sponsors and the ones you wanted.
So you finished sixth in 1980 and won $1,000. Mr. Bodell won it that year, won $31,000. Now you won the 1983 Classic on the Ohio River, which was considered to be the toughest classic ever fished.
Had.
What did you win for first place in '83?
$25,000 cash, and there may have been a boat thrown in there. I can't remember the total amount, but the Classic paid $25,000 for a long time.
You probably thought you hit the lottery on that.
Oh my, yeah, $25,000 was a lottery.
Exactly.
Now, Mr. Larry, let's talk a little bit about that classic. I mean, it's considered the toughest classic ever on the Ohio River. Kind of talk us through how that went down.
Well, me and Tommy went up there and pre-practiced because we'd never been to that river and never heard of it. We went up there, I think, 3 weeks in advance, so we knew how bad it was going to be. And when we went, I just pretty much rode around and looked at a lot of the river. I didn't fish that much, just caught a few maybe on a worm, real shallow. And but when we went back for practice, I remember that I just fished everywhere I could think of, and there was 2 particular little creeks. Finally, the last day of practice that I went into, they were real shallow, hard to get in, hard to maneuver around, and I'd done throat spinner baits and buzz baits and crank baits and did all that stuff, and I said, you know what? And I don't think I had caught a keeper bass. And I come the Classic time, I said, you know what? I ain't laying this worm down. That's all there is to it. I'm going to go to the bank. I'm going to fish everything I can see visually, and because that was the only place you could get a bite, really, and just scrounged around and caught enough fish to win that thing. I think it's like 18 pounds or something like that.
Did your experience on the Arkansas River come into play with that event?
No, because I had never fished the Arkansas River much at that time.
Oh, okay.
I was, let me tell you, when I left Greer's Ferry Lake in Arkansas, I was pretty much a greenhorn other than Toledo Bend. And so I didn't have that much experience river fishing, and just the tournaments that we had been to since I started pro. And but historically, I knew that on river systems, you either fish shallow or you didn't catch nothing.
Right.
So, I did have a really good knowledge of everything that a bass does, whether it's summertime, spring, fall, no matter what time of year, what the conditions and all that stuff. And that's all I done was I just went and fished the shallow shade everywhere I went.
Well, there's one format that BASS used to have that I have some of my fondest memories of watching Bassmaster on TV with Bob Cobb, and when that intro would come on and you're on that intro catching that big hog, I was like, I still remember that today as a kid. The Megabass tournaments, the Megabass Bucks, those events, absolutely, you dominated those events. You won 4 of them, 3 in a row. What about that format that I absolutely loved? What about that format fits you so well, Larry?
Well, I look back on that and I can just smile, and because I was always a fisherman that could read water really quick. And you had 40 minutes to look at this little hole of water. Of course, it wasn't little now, it would be an X amount of distance, but you had to just do things fast, and yet you had to do it right because 40 minutes goes by in a heartbeat. And, I could ride around a hole of water and I'd say, all right, there's one lives right there. All I got to do is figure out how to catch it. And that's pretty much how I fished that whole tournament. Every single Megabucks, I spent my time where I knew a fish was living, until I figured out what to get him to bite. And, you know, it was a matter of just being quiet, don't spook him, and really pick that hole apart, and or that little 50-yard stretch or whatever it may have been. And it worked out perfect for me. I mean, and not only that, that was the most money you could win in BASS back in them days. And I thought to myself, you know, you win one of these and you're set for a long time. And so it's kind of like Ricky Klein saying, you know, the Classic is the thing to win. I thought the Megabucks tournament was the thing to win.
Mm-hmm. Especially from a financial standpoint.
Yes, way more money. And not only that, what was really cool was it was paid in an annuity. You know, you got like a $20,000 or a $10,000 check, and the rest of it was paid over the next 10 years.
Oh, so, I didn't know that.
You know, at one time there, I had four $10,000 checks coming in, whether I'm won a nickel.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that Megabucks wasn't a bad deal. Now it was also a money maker for Mr. Ray Scott, of course, but for the fishermen, I didn't have to pay taxes on but $10,000 a year.
Right.
And yet I had that income coming back to me every year for the next 7 years.
Now you mentioned Mr. Ray Scott there, Mr. Larry, and Mr. Tommy Martin, it was either Tommy or Harold One, was telling us that he was the one that nicknamed you five guys the Hemphill Gang.
That's correct.
What year was that y'all got that nickname?
I wished I knew exactly, but
It had to been late 70s.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna say either 79 or 80. Somewhere right in that neighborhood. I just have to go back. I don't even think it's on that photograph that I've got, but it was somewhere in that period of time right there when all five of us made the Classic like 2 years in a row, and the Hemphill Gang evolved.
real quick, we got Larry Nixon on with us, legend of the sport, one of the greatest anglers to ever fish, and I'm going to give you a stat real quick on Larry. 68% of the time he was in the money. Now, if you're a tournament angler that's out there fishing today and you hear that number, it definitely rings a bell. You're like, that's incredible. Larry, what was the secret? Was there a technique? Was there a method? Or were you just one of those kind of Kevin Van Dam gifted guys that just seemed to have a knack for bass fishing?
Well, there's no doubt I was gifted. You know, I got a lot of that from my dad, Lester Nixon. He was an awesome fisherman, and he had the patience of Job. And I got the patience of Job from him. That's why I said if I knew a bass lived somewhere, I was going to catch that dude. And when it come to tournament fishing, I knew in my mind that I had to have a worm bite or a jig bite to survive a 3-day tournament. And so that was my goal every event, was to find that one pattern that I could fall back on days when they just won't bite. And, you know, that's why I've always been kind of nicknamed the Worm Master, or whatever you want to call it. But because I did catch so many fish on a worm, and then the Cinco came along, and that's still saving my bacon now.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Larry, one more question we have for you here, and we asked Mr. Harold and Mr. Tommy Martin this question as well. What's your thought or opinion on where the world of bass fishing is now? You know, everything we've been through, kind of from where you've seen it from the beginning to kind of where we're at now.
And are we going in the right direction? He's got an opinion, I can tell.
That is a very loaded question. If I was in my 30s and 40s, I would say, man, give me some of that major league fishing, because I could catch the crap out of them now.
Yeah.
But I'm at that age now where I don't believe I could handle that format. My hands are not good. You know, you can't use nets. There's lots of things there that I probably couldn't compete at. Now, I'm not one to judge whether that's good or bad. I would love to try it, especially if I was younger. But the old traditional weigh-in type tournament that we've seen forever and ever and ever, yeah, in some areas you do have big crowds. And, you know, bass still manages to draw big weigh-ins. But for the good of the sport, I actually think MLF is a good way to fish. Now, whether or not they survive the TV, you got to have big viewing audiences to pay purses like they're paying without entry fees.
Right.
And I pray that they survive, but the only time's going to tell us that.
Well, one of the polls, not one poll, several polls that I have either been involved in or seen, they are not appealing to the millennial generation of 18 to 30-year-old age bracket. That's the last one they want to watch. They'd rather watch BASS at this time or FLW than they had MLF. And that really kind of surprised me, the results of that. And I know bass fishing is a young man's sport, but there are so many guys like yourself and Tommy still fishing tournament trails and being competitive with Jimmy Houston. I saw Jimmy at the Ranger boat meeting in December, and of course he's retiring. He said he's getting out. And but you guys have been around for a long time. Is it truly still a young man's sport?
I think it's a young man's sport to the point that I don't know how they're getting all their finances, probably mom and dad, to get started. But, to get out there and just live on the water every day, that's very difficult for me to do anymore. I just can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
A guy in his 40s, he's in his prime. He's ready for it.
Right.
Now, I understand what you're saying. These young kids probably aren't watching MLF, but I think that it'll grow on them.
I think MLF has done a good job of seeing what they need to fix. Just like this year, they put in the 2-pound rule penalty. I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah, that did help a lot.
I think they are making a lot of changes in, that needs to be made to make it a little bit more appealing.
It's a work in progress. Basically.
Absolutely.
It's a work. Yes, it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah.
I watch it.
I do too.
I watch the heck out of it.
Yeah,
Now.
I record it. Yeah. So
I love to watch it. I love to see some of them blow a gasket and lose their cool.
Yeah.
And I can also see them that get bent out of shape and all of a sudden just blow it because they can't control their nerves or whatever. But
right.
I'm good at that because I can critique it. Or what? How you say that word? Critique.
Yeah. Well, a camera in the boat.
I can tell when somebody's going to do good when they're just wasting their time.
I've always said a camera in the boat with a microphone with Gerald Swindle is nothing but entertainment. So
that's exactly right.
Well, hey, Larry, we appreciate you. We thank you for joining us today. It's been absolutely a blast to go back to the past and hear how things really were back in the day and all the trials and tribulations you guys had to go through, help pave the way for these guys today. And I hope these younger generation guys understand what Larry Nixon and Tommy Martin and Harold Allen and you guys gave to this sport that has made it what it is today.
Oh, there's no doubt. We fished the heydays, and along with Ray Scott promoting, we built this sport pretty much. Rick Klein, Ricky Green, all them old timers that fished all these tournaments. My gosh, even all the patterns you see come out of today's sport, 99% of them are a knockoff of something that we had did.
And that y'all kept secret from us for so many years.
Exactly. Now, I want to ask you. I do want to ask you.
We did that wacky worm and that shaky head forever, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask you one more question. I've asked this of a lot of the professional anglers. If you could go back to the 1970s and you can take one thing with you, say maybe a bait or electronics, whatever. If you could take one thing from today back to then, what would it be?
Well, it definitely wouldn't be electronics because most of them people didn't have enough patience to sit there and read a paper map and get out there and look around at a flasher and learn how to fish deep like David Fritz and myself and Mark Davis. And there wasn't many of them guys, Tommy Martin. Mm-hmm. And, we learned that at Toledo Bend, and it would not be electronics. It would probably be a variation of a lure like a spinnerbait, and that would be the chatterbait because it is a fish-catching bait. Mm-hmm. It's a big fish-catching bait, and it's one that we did not have back in them days.
That's the one bait that two other guys have said, and then three other guys have said the Cinco.
Well, I should have said that to start with, because that's my number one bait. And oh my God, if I'd have had it back then, I would have been bad.
Yeah,
that is the two lures that I would love to have had back then. And even back then, we were fishing a Cinco, but we really didn't know it in that old Cream Scoundrel. It was just as hard as a brick, the same length, smaller diameter, but it had a lot of the same characteristics of a Cinco, except it didn't have the weight.
Right.
And the Cinco, you don't even have to put no weight in that thing. Just put a hook in it, throw it out there. It don't even care where you put the hook. It'll catch fish.
Exactly. Again, Larry, thank you. We appreciate you, man. Hey, you stay safe out there, and we look forward to having you back on again one day. And next week we're going to start the Conroe gang. And Zell Rowland, he told me to ask you a question. I'm trying to think what it was. And something about you owing him some money or something. I can't remember what it was. But anyway.
I can visualize that question.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Next week we're going to have Zell Rowland.
I can go back and get in a boat race with Harold Allen. That was a boat racingest freak there was. And he had a Skeeter and I had a Stratus. And buddy, we had two hot ones that we raced one time from Cypress Bend. When we went under the bridge, there wasn't 20 foot separating the two of us, and I was one boat ahead of him, and he never passed me, and I never let him live it down.
And that's when you had what, 150s? Those were 150s?
Yeah, but buddy, we were running hot back then.
Yeah, that's when guys played with their motors a little bit and bored the heads and all kind of stuff.
Well, we couldn't do that legally, but we could darn sure play with them boat bottoms.
Yeah.
Mr. Larry, we do appreciate it, and I said, we just these last 3 series we had you and Mr. Tommy, Mr. Harold on, just hopefully kind of relive some of them Hemphill Gang days and kind of the moments you have had. And like Steve said, we're going to start covering the Conroe Gang next week, but we sure appreciate all y'all have done for us and the sport, and again, we appreciate you being on the show and look forward to having you again.
Good deal. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Mr. Larry.
Larry Nixon. Hemphill Gang, one of the original members of the Hemphill Gang. We want to thank Mr. Larry again for taking time out of his day, which is not busy. Like you said, he ain't busy unless you're going fishing right now.
Steve, after this being the 3rd show we've done over this Hemphill Gang and Mr. Tommy and Harold and Larry, it just is amazing to me, their memory, and they can tell you what year, what they caught them on, how much money they won. Yep. I can't tell you what I caught them on in the BFL last year.
Yeah, or last weekend.
So it is just really amazing to me, their memory and the attention to detail that they can still remember. They give you the year, they give you what they caught them on, they give you where, how much exact money
what the weather was like.
They won. Tommy Martin is turning 80 years old in this year, and he can remember it all.
Oh yeah.
But man, this has been my favorite series of shows we've done so far, covering this Hemphill Gang, and make sure starting next week you tune in as Steve said, we're going to cover the Conroe Gang.
Start with Zell Rowland of the Conroe Gang. That's which is Gary Klein and who else?
Zell Rowland and
Gary Klein and Rick Klein.
Those
3 guys were considered the Conroe Gang, and back in the same time period. So,
but real quick, kind of going back over some other topics happening right now. We don't have much going on, but as we talked about last week, we do still have the Bass Cash Bash tournament going on. The Sam Rayburn boat tag was caught last weekend by a lady who was not registered,
or rumored to have caught.
Yeah. It's not one. It's been said that she brought it by the store and was asked questions about it. Anyway, long story short, rumor that she took it home. That fish got filleted and the tag was thrown away. Yeah. So Mr. Clint Wade from Outlaw Outdoors got a tag from P.D. Vincent, because us Louisiana folks cannot go over to Texas. And Clint Wade got a new boat tag submitted yesterday. Got it put back in the water right there at Castle Boykins. It's up on the website, on the social media of him doing the boat tag and throwing it back in the water. So we do have a new boat tag in Sam Rayburn.
Right. Also, Major League Fishing, they have postponed Stage 5 of Grand Lake, their Grand Lake event that was coming up this month. No surprise there. And Also, I think you got Cliff Pace has got something going on today.
Major League Fishing is doing every day. They're looking for topics, looking for stuff to do. And today at 4:00 Central Time, they are going live with Cliff Pace at his building. And this is a really cool thing. I think a lot of you might want to watch because it's going to go over Cliff building balsa baits.
Yeah, and understand, Cliff is one of the owners of V&M Baits.
He is. He's a part owner of V&M. He owns a balsa bait. He owns Boss Outdoors.
Yeah.
Cliff does it all.
Right.
But it's going to be a pretty cool video, something to watch. It's going to be live. So, again, they're going to cover him fully building a balsa bait from scratch, building jigs and some different things. Cliff is a manufacturer for basically everything bass fishing.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those tinkers and things you like to do, make sure you tune into the Major League Fishing social media day. It will be social media live. So I think that'd be something pretty cool and interesting for a lot of you to check out.
Also, Texas Team Trail out of Texas over there, they have canceled the Amstead tournament, which was scheduled for April 18th. A lot of these events, I'm sure they're going to try to reschedule. The problem you're going to have, Kevin, is that there's all these boat ramps are going to be. It's who gets there first, basically. Who reserves them first?
Who can reserve it the fastest?
Because there's a lot of tournaments being postponed that are supposedly going to make them up later. But you guys that are out there that are tournament anglers, get ready. Because you're probably going to fish some back-to-back days on two separate events, trying to make up some of these dates that were getting pushed back.
Yeah, I'm hoping if we can get back to fishing in May and June, July is just going to be September, October is just going to be cram-packed.
Yeah, and it could be this summer we're fishing more in the heat of the summer than we like to be.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's see. What else we got?
Last wave of the spawn could be this week with full moon tomorrow.
Yep. Tomorrow's the first day of the full moon.
It's, Toledo Bend and San Mario both has been really good fishing lately. Both lakes, from the people I've talked to, has been able to go. And, a lot of sight fishing going on. So I figured that one of the last waves, there might be another. There's going to be a couple more smaller waves move up throughout April. But I predict this to be the last major wave of fish to move up and do their thing on both big lakes.
Yeah, and especially if you want to catch numbers right now, now's a great time to go pick up
and try to catch a big one.
Yeah, and pick up a swim jig. There are a lot of fish. I know at Rayburn they're catching a lot of small fish, especially the frog bite and topwater bites back on. Ken Smith at KenSmithFishing.com has been giving some reports, and he's catching a lot of fish, but they're small. But again, that may change this week with some of the bigger females maybe pulling back up on them. So also another thing, Yamaha is taking action during the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of these companies are shut down. Yamaha has announced that they will be taking actions where regulations and conditions allow, including furloughs and staff reductions. This will commence at the following Yamaha and Yamaha Marine U.S.-based manufacturing facilities next week. Bennett Marine in Deerfield Beach, Florida. G3 Boats in Lebanon, Missouri. Craycore Rotational Molders in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Skeeter Boats out of Kilgore. Yamaha Jet Boat Manufacturing out of Tennessee. Another Yamaha Manufacturing out of Newman, Georgia. And another Yamaha Precision Propellers out of Indianapolis, Missouri. They will be shutting down or working with limited number of people, I'm sure, to try to stay safe, probably keep safe distance between each other. But so Yamaha, just like everybody else, taking action to try to reduce their force but continue to operate. Because, Kevin, you and I both know right now, just when they were running wide open, it was, if you had a boat on order and you're waiting on a Yamaha or a Mercury, a lot of times you were waiting a while. 6 to 8 weeks on some of these deliveries.
This is going to back things up, no doubt about that. But, I think everything's going to be backed up, Steve.
Oh, ain't no doubt.
So
boats, everything.
The virus is affecting the whole world, not just the fishing industry, but there's no doubt it will have some ripple effect coming down through fall, winter, into next spring.
Also, Kevin and I are going to be posting some Tackle Talk Live tips of the week. I posted one. We had one last week. I'm not sure if James has gotten that posted yet, but I know that's one that we've got ready to go. Kevin's getting ready to do another one. So stay tuned for that as well. And we're going to be doing some of those and trying to give you some ideas and some things that, not that we do, but products that we use or maybe techniques that we use to help make you a better angler.
Absolutely, and the one I did for this week, I think, James, we have that one we're fixing to show right now. This is over the fish clips, the weights, and it's just something I know that will help a lot of you as anglers to keep your fish alive.
Especially if you're catching fish from deep water, that's where
Correct.
this will really come in handy for you. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, Kevin, I guess that's going to wrap us up. We appreciate you tuning us in. And again, if you want to catch more fish and become a better angler, continue to watch Tackle Talk Live.
Hey guys, Kevin here with Tackle Talk Live Weekly Tips. This week I want to talk to you about the weighted belly clips that you can use for fish. Now it's something that I do instead of fizzing fish for deeper. I'm a deep guy. I fish deep a lot, and instead of having to fizz a fish, you can put the weighted clips on their bottom fin and keep them upright in the live well. This is a Fish Life clip. This is the brand that I like to use. There's several brands out there. I just like this one because it has the weight on an extension off the clip. That way the fish don't shake it as often. I have both. I have the regular weight that's attached to the clip. I just really feel like the Fish Life brand, the fish doesn't shake as often. You're having to constantly go back, put your hands in the live well, put your hands on the fish, and re-clip them. You're still going to have to, because these fish are going to shake these things. There's no doubt about it. But again, I just feel like the ones with the clip, with the weight extended to off the clip, doesn't shake as much. So the big myth out there is, these are mainly for deep fishermen. Don't get me wrong, but everybody should have these in their boat. Everybody. If you're a shallow guy that fishes shallow 365 days a year, you still need to carry clips in your boat. It's one of those things to where if you put a fish in a live well 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, you go back there, you got weigh in at 3, and you go back there at 1, 2 o'clock, and he's on his side, he's just been stressed, he's been in the live well all day. You throw a clip on his bottom fin, he most likely makes it to 3 o'clock. We've all had that fish that I caught him in a foot of water, and at the end of the day, he died. And you don't understand why. Well, a fish clip, a weight, could have probably saved that fish's life and saved you from having a penalty, a dead fish penalty at the end of the day if you had a clip. 10 to 15 foot. Guys, if a fish is on bottom 10, 15 foot of water and you reel him to the top as fast as you can, throw him in a live well, probably by the end of the day, he's going to be on his side or not feeling well. Again, all you have to do is as soon as you put him in a live well and you go back there and check on him, they're on their side, you just take the clip, hook it on their bottom fin, and that allows the fish to sit up right. It allows him to breathe better. It allows him to regurgitate anything he needs to get up. So it doesn't build that air pocket on their side and makes them get on their side or upside down in your live well, and that's what causes them to die or allows them to die. They can't get oxygen in or out when they have that air bubble. So, the bigger the fish, the more weight clips you have to put on it. 4 or 5 pound fish usually require 2 or 3 of these weights to get them upright. I was very fortunate to catch a 10 pounder a couple years ago in Toledo Bend, on Sam Rayburn. And I was in a tournament, and luckily I had a lot of clips in my live well. It took 5 or 6 of these weights just to get her to upright. I caught her in 25 foot of water, and to get her upright where she could breathe and get air in and out to relieve some of that air pocket off of her. And it took that many weight clips. So you need to have several of these in the boat. But again, I highly recommend everybody carrying the fish clips, the fish weights. Now, it does take the place of having to fizz a fish. A lot of people, that struggle with fizzing or don't know how to fizz a fish, a lot of people fizz fish too soon. They don't need fizzing. You just put the weight clips on them, and that might get, when they set up right, they'll get right themselves, and you don't have to fizz that fish. But think about, definitely purchasing some fish weights next time you're in the tackle store or buying online. They're real cheap, guys. Just throw them in your cart, and it will save you some dead fish penalties down the road, and hopefully a big fish for you one day, keeping it saving so we can get back in the water. So this has been your Tackle Talk Live Weekly Tips.